I am trying to get 1 billion people to find happiness in this world, right? I will never achieve that target, but it might be achieved after I leave.
Gawdat! Yes, he is the former chief business officer of Google X and the author of the international best-selling book, Scary Smart.
Your life's purpose is to become the best version of you that you have the potential to become. And 91% of us will have PTSD-inducing traumatic event at least once in our life.
I lost my mother when I was 11. There was no loss that could hurt me.
In an age where everything is becoming so confusing, more money is not going to make you happy. The best way to achieve success is...
What's up, guys, and welcome back to First Things First with a very special guest today, Mo. Thank you very much for joining me. What brings you back to Dubai? As far as I know, you once upon a time packed up, left your apartment and went on your travels.
I did. So thank you for having me to start.
No
Wonderful place. I love it. I do have a coffee machine in Dubai. I have a place that I call home, with lots of fish tanks and lots of greenery, and it's a beautiful, really my sanctuary, if you want, as close as you can to the desert. Of course, with my mission and my travel, I normally don't end up spending a lot of time there. I probably spend maybe 4, maximum 5 months a year there. And then the rest of the year I'm traveling. So my next book, Unstressable, is out in a few weeks. And so I'm basically trying to take 10 days off. Mm-hmm. There you go. And we're here right now.
And what's been the motivation to write this new book of yours?
Unstressable is very timely, I would say. So I wrote... First, I wrote about happiness, and then I wrote about artificial intelligence. If you want, I moved from happiness to writing about the reasons for unhappiness. Mm-hmm. My third book, That Little Voice in Your Head, was basically around thought and how thought makes us very unhappy. I'm working, as we discussed before, on love and romance. I call it finders keepers. I'm working on empowerment of the feminine. Unstressable basically addresses what I believe is the biggest pandemic of our time. There was a survey actually in the UK last year where 99% of the participants surveyed said that they struggled with extreme stress at some time in the year. Mm-hmm. Right? We know for a fact that for the last few years that 70 to 80% of doctors' visits are because of a stress-related illness. So yeah, you may go because of diabetes or because of obesity or because of, cardiac issues or whatever, but the underlying reason behind them is stress. And when I met my co-author, Alice Law, Alice had struggled with, basically she went to stress school, if you want. So within a very short period of her life, in her early 20s, the sister was diagnosed with cancer at the same time that her father lost his business. Then they had to, sell their home. She then lost her sister. Her father was diagnosed with cancer. And, it was a whole story and a breakup and, her company shut down and so on. And so within like 6 years, she went through every type of stress that you can ever go through. And I hosted her on my podcast. And she told her story. And then at the end of the conversation, you know how it is, you finish the recording and then you chat a little. And she said, how can you write about happiness when you haven't solved the underlying reason? How can people be happy when they're stressed? And I said, well, good point, right? What do you think we can write about? And so we ended up writing, I think, a yin and yang of a book, like a very balanced book. So Alice is very spiritual, very soft, young, beautiful, feminine, very, in the practices of, she's a Reiki master and a meditation teacher and, a lot of those things that I would never write about. And if you know my work, I'm a very grumpy, straightforward engineer, bullet points, equations if I can. And, I use logic, I use process and so on. And so between the two of us, as we started to brainstorm about Unstressable, we ended up with a very, very interesting book. I think honestly, I think it's one of my favorite works so far, because I start from the algorithm of stress, and then we end up with the last chapter of what we call spiritually stressed, or as Alice calls it, sovereignty. And it's a very, very comprehensive, very balanced yin and yang view of stress in a way that actually works.
Because I would imagine that you need some element of stress is good. Like,
yes,
you
for
need
sure.
it.
No, you don't need it. So put it this way: stress is stress reconfigures you to become superhuman when you need it. So you don't need stress, but when you are faced with a challenge or a threat, stress saves you, right? And so, if you take just the biological view of stress, a tiger shows up, or some kind of a car while you're crossing the street, and you need superhuman feet to be able to, to run away or fight the tiger, right? So fight or flight responses. And for that to happen, it's a very, very quick, almost, fractions of a second, autonomous response. It's triggered by your amygdala. So this is the closest part to your reptilian brain. It's part of the brain stem almost. It tells the hypothalamus that there is something that it detects is wrong. It hasn't even figured out what that is. There is no logic in the amygdala. That your logic is in your prefrontal cortex. And so with that trigger, you get a cocktail of hormones called CHT that trigger your adrenal gland to put cortisol in your blood. And once you get cortisol in your blood, it's almost like the movie The Hulk. You just completely get reconfigured. Your pupils dilate, your brain gets more sugar, you can focus, you can concentrate, your muscles get to work better and stronger and faster, and so on and so forth. Again, just for fight or flight, or, by the way, for the presentation you have to do on Thursday, right? Wonderful. This is all okay. That part of stress we love. The problem is, this is not the whole stress cycle. The second half of the stress cycle is, they call it the negative feedback loop. And that's basically within 90 seconds from the original stress response. Believe it or not, within 90 seconds, whether you ran away from the tiger or not, the entire hormones, the whole mix of hormones in your body dissipate. They're consumed, right? And within 90 seconds, you get that buffer, a moment where your logical brain, your rational brain is consulted. Is there actually a tiger? Okay, and if your rational brain decides that yes, there is still a reason to be afraid or to be worried, or there is a challenge that I need to continue to address, it will trigger the same cycle again. Not from the amygdala this time, but really from thought, if you want, from very, very quick, but very, perceptive and rational view, right? Here's the challenge. In our modern world today, first of all, most of our stresses are not triggered by an actual tiger. Okay, it's not a physical, stress or threat. When I arrived here, thank you for accepting my apology. I arrived, around 20 minutes late. You do live in an area that, stay in an area that is very busy, right? But that constitutes a stress signal, right? It stresses me that I'm keeping you waiting. Okay. And so as a result of that, I'm in the car, I'm texting Meg, I'm saying, hey, Meg, can you please apologize to them? I'm running late and so on. There's no tiger. But you can struggle with that in your thoughts, and you can trigger a stress response that when you get into the feedback loop, you can, your brain can say, I told you you're going to be late. Nothing has changed. 90 seconds ago, you're still stressed right now. And that can sometimes last forever.
Yeah.
Right? So we end up breaking when that continues to happen. Why? Because that superhuman configuration that turns you into the Hulk, if you want, is supposed to last 90 seconds. If, when you're doing that, you're serving those parts of your body that are needed for survival, but you're depriving the entire remainder of your body of the blood and the energy that it needs to survive. So your kidney functions are not supported your liver function, your digestion, and so this is why you get IBS when you're very stressed, and so on and so forth. You're not even replenishing your muscles. You're not regaining your energy. You're not digesting your food, and
it's almost impossible to successfully lose body fat if you're just chronically stressed out all the time.
Is that true?
It's true, because a lot of people who I've worked with, those that have struggled to lose body fat, the ones that struggle the most are the ones that are experiencing just constant stress all the time. Of course, when you train and you're in the gym for an hour and a half, that spike in cortisol and stress is good for you. It's a good thing. But the goal should be, as soon as the session is done, bring it right down.
Correct. So that cycle of replenish through protein and diet, and then rest to be able to recreate that. That rest bit is the parasympathetic state. That's the state we're seeking, right? And you need that also as a survival mechanism, believe it or not, because without the parasympathetic state, you're constantly eating out your body. And that's why we end up with chronic stress, right? So is stress good for you? Yeah, if you use it, if a challenge is upon you and stress is used to overcome the challenge and then come back to your, rest and digest state, great. But if you're stressed for the last 6.5 years because you're unhappy with the politician or the party that's running your country, or you're stressed for the last 1.5 years because you have an issue with your partner, if you're stressed because of your commute to work, and this happens every single day, then over time you're going to end up with chronic stress that will burn you out. Right? I mean, burnout is one of the 3 reasons why we break down, but it is the most epidemic of stress that we face today. It's that constant application of stressors, medium size and small size, that add up at the end to basically destroy your normal human functioning.
And you would say it's been progressively getting worse?
I would say that burnout, whether you actually burn out and break and stay at home and unable to get out of bed, or burnout in terms of being way overloaded to the point that your stress is affecting your ability to perform, is probably upwards of 60 or 70% of everyone that who is fully engaged in the modern world.
I think it's quite difficult for certain people who are, maybe they're working a 9 to 5 and they can only get like 2 or 3 weeks off from the year, to be able to just go away and relax, go to nature, and actually de-stress. Because I think you mentioned before that you allocate a certain percentage of your year, or a couple months per year, where you just kind of go off and you disappear. But obviously not everybody's going to have the freedom to do that.
So that's a beautiful segue into why we wrote Unstressable. So Unstressable is a promise not to de-stress you only. De-stressing you is not the answer. It's to make you unstressable. And the reason why we called it Unstressable is because the slogan of the book and the community and all of the work that we do is that it's not the events of your life that stress you, it's the way you deal with them that does. Right? And it's actually quite eye-opening when you really think about it, that it is not my retreat. I retreat for 40 days of silence every year, which I think
where you don't say anything, or
my silent retreat is not the very sort of monastic religious type of silent retreat. I go to nature, okay, and I basically limit my interactions with the outside world to 40 minutes a day. So while I'm in nature, I allow myself to write. I allow myself to reflect. I allow myself to listen to music. I do drink a lot of coffee because I love coffee. And, and basically normally when I go to nature, I end up with at least 80% of a book in 40 days, which is quite significant for an author like myself. I normally don't publish. I publish probably less than 30% of what I write, which is quite an interesting way of writing. I write for me, really, and most authors will agree that writing the book is the joyful part of it. Publishing it is a nightmare. and all of the editing and the publicity and so on. But
Is it, does it end up being something that's really quite long and then it just gets condensed and shortened, or is it
most
almost
books-
reworded?
yeah, so every book I wrote started from around 650 pages. So you see, it's quite interesting because it's easy to say things in a lot of words.
Hmm.
It's actually a lot more intricate and more of an art to deliver a message with fewer words. And the industry normally likes books to be around the 200 pages, 220. All of my books are like in the 365, 385. No publisher will ever publish you in my category of, they call it smart nonfiction. More than 400 pages, that would be impossible because cost-wise, the book wouldn't be profitable for them. Yeah. Having said that, it's not just... So you'll be amazed, huh? Solve for Happy, I think my pride of my whole life, really, because it reflected my story with my son really interestingly, and it was a very emotional book.
For those that don't know the full story, he passed away.
He did. He left our world when he was 21 and a half because of a very preventable medical error. All of a sudden, so he had, he was visiting for a vacation and had a belly pain that turned out to be an appendix inflammation. Prescribed a surgery, which is really the simplest surgery known to humanity, normally a 4 minutes surgery. And 5 things went wrong, and Ali left our world. And as he did, before he did, he spent his entire life teaching me, which gets you to really wonder, honestly, because, why would I be blessed with such an amazing sage, almost of a son, that taught me so much? And then, at the time when he left, I was chief business officer of Google X. So you can imagine my lifestyle, rich and famous, busy meetings, billion-dollar deals, all of that stuff. And very little focus, even though by then, because of all that he taught me, I was the calmest person you'll ever meet. Very disconnected from the capitalist way of chasing life. But yet, I believed until that moment that my life's mission was business. And then he dies, and he had a very compelling dream, let's say, 2 weeks before he died, that his sister told me about around 4 days later after he left us. And it was, so my daughter comes to me and says, Ali told me that he had a dream. He only told me about it. He said that he dreamt he was everywhere and part of everyone. And in a lot of spiritual practices and teachings, everywhere and part of everyone is actually the definition of death. But I didn't know that at the time. At the time, I looked at it with my businessman's mind as a quota. I literally looked at it as my teacher giving me an objective. So she said everywhere and part of everyone. Remember, before I was chief business officer of Google X, I was the vice president of Google's emerging markets. So I took Google to 4 billion people, basically half of Google's operations globally. And so I knew how to reach billions. It was very straightforward, and the tech allows you to do that. And so as soon as I heard, remember 4 days after he left our world, so as soon as I heard everywhere and part of everyone, in my mind it translated into, okay, take his essence, what he taught you, and share it with the world so that a small piece of him, a small part of him is everywhere and part of everyone. And so Aya tells me that, my daughter tells me that, and I remember vividly where I was. I found myself dropping on my sofa, really, and saying, okay, Habibi, consider it done. Fine, if that's what you want me to do. And so I sat down. Of course, unfortunately, loss is also, surrounded by all of those bureaucracies and paperwork and, obligations and memorials and so on and so forth. And so it took me 17 days after he left, after he left, which is 13 days after I told me this. And then I sat down, and within 2.5 months, I wrote Sold for Happy, which was everything that we shared together. So I was a very successful, very miserable business executive since my late 20s. Incredibly successful. Like everything I touched turned to gold. And I had no idea why, because I was born and raised in Egypt, public school, public university in Egypt. Honestly not qualified to go very far in the international world. Everything I touched turned to gold. And so, but I was miserable. So by 29, I had everything. I was living here in Dubai at the time. I had a massive
it's a fun
villa.
place to be when you've got a lot of money.
A lot of money, massive
Or it seemed
villa.
like a fun place to be.
I think Dubai is a fun place if you find yourself in it. Doesn't matter if you have a lot of money or not, right? As a matter of fact, having a lot of money in it made me miserable. Miserable because, I drove my Jaguar, which was, I had a Daimler at the time that was very rare and very well selected. And you park it in, Mall of the Emirates, and you're between a Rolls Royce and a Lamborghini. And you go like, what's wrong with me? Okay, it's a very weird place when you think about it this way, and so Ali, I remember again my Habibti, my daughter Aya, who's still really life itself. So Ali was a tiny little Zen monk, okay, always calm, always peaceful. Aya still is life itself. She just pours life into the world. And I remember when she was 5, she comes to my office on a Saturday morning. I was a business executive at the time. I was also trading the stock market way before what you have now was happening, and I coded my own algorithms, and I coded my own literally crawler of the internet, pre-Google. I coded a way for a little, spider to go across the internet and get me news about the stocks that I was trading. And basically woke up every morning at 5 a.m., looked at the stock market with the information I had, and printed money on demand. Literally, like I jokingly tell the story of one day when my wife was like, we need to change the car. And I said, so what are you looking for? And, she said, maybe we can buy this. And I said, that's going to have to be Wednesday. Like literally, the market opens on Monday. By Wednesday, we will have that amount of money, right? And it is shocking because I was miserable, miserable, Mike. I couldn't find joy in anything, right? And then Aya walks into my office on that Saturday morning, and she's like popping up and down from happiness, like, we're going to this place and we're going to have ice cream, and can we do that? And maybe we can go to the movies. Can we pass by Toys R Us? And she's so excited. And I looked at her as that grumpy executive, literally the image that you see in the movies. And I said, can we please be serious for a minute? Right? And tiny, and if you see pictures of her, she's so cute, right? And I could see her heartbreak. And I remember that was my turning point. I locked myself in the bathroom, and I looked in the mirror and I said, I hate you. I don't like this at all. Like, why are you doing this? And it was only, believe it or not, 12 years of work later, with the help of Aya and Ali, but so much of it was Ali's wisdom. Ali spoke very little. He always joked, he was never serious. But when he was serious, he would ask you questions for hours and then basically say 4 to 8 words that would flip your life upside down. And I would go do all of my research on happiness, and Ali would, eventually I'd find something like my happiness equation, and I go sit in front of Ali and I go like, sort of almost like, Sensei, I found out the reason, right? And I would explain it to him, and he would entertain me with a couple of questions just to make me feel like I did a good job, right? And then he eventually says, Papa, you could have just asked me. Right? And literally he would tell me something, but from the heart, not from here. Not the cerebral person that I am. And it would make so much sense. And between the two of us, 12 years later, I was truly unstressable.
Did you walk away at this point from the position you had?
No, I only walked away 2018, believe it or not, because of my second book.
So you were able to write and still fulfill your position.
I've always been able to. I mean, if you look at my life now, I do 7 full-time jobs, right? Not because I'm super smart or anything. It's just because I am almost ruthlessly discriminative in terms of what I allow myself to do. I believe that, again, part of Unstressable, I believe that 80% of the stuff we do at work is just to prove that we're alive. It's just to feed our ego, really. That effective, delivery of your results, depending on where you are in the hierarchy, but even for the most junior of anyone, with 40% of the time, you probably can deliver your targets, right?
What do you not allow yourself to do?
So at the very top level, there are things at large that I don't touch, right? So, I don't, I come to podcasts because it's a wonderful, deep conversation that we can together reach hundreds of thousands of people with logical content and, with emotional content. And you can really dig deep and get into a conversation. I don't do radio. I don't do TV. You'd get here in the region, for example, you'd get people like Al Jazeera or Al Arabiya and, very, very large networks. And nothing wrong with that, but it is such a short shelf life of content where people are rushing and not even paying attention that, yes, if you do something on Al Jazeera, you reach, 200, 300,000 people, but you reach them for 3 minutes and then they'll be distracted by the next thing. Right?
It feels very scripted as well.
And so you have to make those choices because it is very difficult if you allow yourself to just respond to everything. So if my mission, 1 billion happy, is to reach as many people as possible, I am choosy in terms of I will have content that is evergreen. This conversation will hopefully remain on the podcast players and the internet forever. Right? That is deep enough to explain something so that people can actually change their lives, right? And that is, not every podcast. Sadly, there are millions of podcasts now. I can't be on every one of them. So I get very selective around that. But also at the same time, I get very selective around jobs at large. So if you can imagine, someone like me who's been chief business officer of Google X with my awareness and knowledge of AI, who, with the work that we've done on innovation at Google, which I was a very integral part of with a deep understanding of emerging markets, I can get countless, consultancy jobs or board memberships. And I simply say no up front, right? Why? Because at the end of the day, if I was doing one job, so I'm an author, I'm a speaker, I'm a podcaster, I work in tech in many ways, and so on. I have the community of Unstressable, which is an ongoing thing that happens every month, and so on. And if I choose to do only one of them, I'd probably do it in 20% of the time of a normal human. Right, of a normal full-time job, okay? And then I'd have 80% free. But from an efficiency point of view, I'd rather do 20 on each of them and then have a full 100% of my effort dedicated to the top part of what actually makes a difference, right? So rather than say, I'm going to give 100% of my time to one of them, I'm going to give 20% of my time to each and reach the 80% of that range. Yeah, I'm not 100% at it, but I'm quite far in one of them, in each of them, that combined, I'd probably feel I'm contributing more to the world.
What would you prefer to be known for? Solving the happiness issue or ensuring that AI doesn't get out of control? Because I was scrolling the other day and it made me laugh because obviously you want to be known as the guy who's spreading the happiness. And then I see these two thumbnails back to back.
Yeah. I mean,
we built a monster and society is collapsing, and it's just like, oh, that doesn't sound very happy.
So it's a very interesting question. So actually, sadly, but very timely, if you search my name on the internet, It's all warnings around
People
AI.
love negativity.
Because negativity gets more, gets you to see, gets picked by the algorithm a lot more online. Believe it or not, if you add all of my work and content on the internet, the majority of it is about happiness and stress and so on. The interesting side, you said, what would I want to be remembered for or known for? Believe it or not, the original mission, 1 billion happy, was stated in writing as we want to enable 1 billion people to find the path to their happiness and well-being and be completely forgotten. So we wanted as a team to be completely forgotten. Why? Because first of all, it sort of removes your ego, because it's, as much as you try, once you're in the public eye, your ego plays up. Okay, I've luckily, and I use very interesting techniques, believe it or not, I've luckily tried to remind myself that I'm a normal human. I go to poop every morning, right? I make tons of mistakes. I crave love and I look for a wonderful person in my life. I'm just a human, right? Who's got very lucky, to be honest. But that's one side. You need to trim your ego if you want to make a difference to the world.
Yeah.
But the other side, which I think is more interesting, is we live in a world where I hope that would never happen. But we live in a world where if I'm vilified or criticized or cancelled by someone for any reason, that will probably not be the quality of my work. It will probably be another reason. I may have a specific view on the current conflicts in the world, where I basically I'm saying stop killing children, and that might upset people who want to kill children. And so if I'm vilified and I'm the face of the mission, then the mission becomes null and void. And we've attempted so hard to not have that. Right. We, when I say we, is a small team, or like we're a team of 7, basically, 1 billion happy and all of the work that we do. Sadly, however, by 2019, my head of 1billionhappy.org, the charity, sat me down and said, look, people don't relate to knowledge, people relate to people. You're going to have to show up. And at the time, I had like 4,000 followers on Instagram or whatever. I just was completely away from the spotlight. And I started to show up, right? What am I showing up for? I am trying to get 1 billion people to find happiness in this world, right? I will never achieve that target. This is a much bigger target than me, but it might be achieved after I leave, right? So if I leave enough knowledge behind me, and if I leave enough champions of that concept that happiness is your birthright and it's attainable, just like fitness, if you work at it, you'll get there. Then, through 6 degrees of separation in maybe 70 years, we'll get there.
How do you track something like that?
We track very accurately, actually. So the mission 1 billion happy we count you as one of the 1 billion if you did 1 plus 1 of 2 things. So the first one is we try to reach you with a message that changes your mind. The problem with happiness and stress, okay, is that we think that unhappiness and stress are part of life. That, if you're part of the modern world, you have to be unhappy sometimes. You have to pay the tax for your success in terms of unhappiness and stress, okay? And the message I send to the world is no. As a matter of fact, the best way to achieve success is to not be unhappy and it's not to be stressed, right? So it's your birthright. You're born happy and you run out of happiness because of the conditioning of the modern world. And that it's not the events of your life that make you unhappy. It's not the events of your life that stress you. It's the way you deal with them that does, right?
You talk to yourself.
Yeah. So basically, the first message is make it your priority. Decide that you actually want to be happy, that you want to remove the stress, and realize that, like fitness, if you put in the effort, you will get there. Okay. So that's the first message. If you get that and then do nothing about it, then we've just shown you a video, right? So for us to count you as one of 1 billion happy, we want you to take one of two actions. So you got the message is it's my birthright and it's attainable. You either start to invest in yourself. So you see more videos on the topic, you read books about the topic, you look for podcasts about the topic, you look for more content from myself or other speakers on the topic. That basically means you're investing in yourself. Or you start to invest in others. So you take that content and you share it, and you add a little bit of an explanation from your side, and you say, maybe this is very important, or watch this, or this is important for you, and so on and so forth. And those two are very measurable online, believe it or not. So if you take how many people got the message so far, we're probably very far along the path. Probably my content was watched maybe 300, 250 million times so far in, either short videos on mostly long form, interestingly.
Well, you know what's interesting on the Stephen's Diary of a CEO?
Yeah.
One of yours was the third most viewed.
It's the third most viewed, yeah.
And nearly 10 million views.
Yeah, and it's the third most viewed on YouTube, but also on the, if you look at the top two, I don't remember who was the top one, but I think the Canadian philosopher, the name skips me, was number one. So, such a very well-known person, right? But these things, they're quite interesting, huh? It's if I don't celebrate that, I did 3 with Stephen and a 4th is coming out. I don't celebrate that they were viewed maybe in a combined 30, 40, 50 million times. I celebrate the number of people that tell each other about it. So, my podcast about happiness was the most shared of that year of all podcasts on Apple, globally. So all of the Joe Rogan stuff, all of the, Jay Shetty stuff, all of the big podcasts out there, the most shared podcast of the entire year was that episode, right? Which basically confirms the 1 billion happy movement, that people are interested in sharing that with others. Now, do we measure it that accurately anymore? Believe it or not, back in 2021, I had a very interesting shift in my life where I basically decided, it was so shocking, Mike, when you really think about it, because by 2021, I had been an author and a speaker and a thinker for 4 years. I left Google in 2017. It took me up to March 2018 to actually be out of Google. And it is... until that day in 2021, I was still running 1 billion happy as a business. So measuring everything, looking at every number, trying to see the statistics and the direction and what can we do and so on and so forth. And it just hit me on 2 levels. Level 1 is that I'm no longer a business executive. I have an incredible team that deals with things like business executives. As I said, tiny team, but incredible people. But at the same time, I'm a creative. So if I'm in the industry of creating content or explaining complex concepts and so on, I need to be able to behave as a creative. So that means if I wake up in the morning and I'm inspired to write 40 pages, I cannot have 6 meetings of 25 minutes each, right? And so that was the first thing. The second thing is I actually realized very, very strongly, and it's not a spiritual or a religious thing, that this is not my mission. I had someone who I hold very dear, very, very, very enlightened, if you want, walk to me and say, "You didn't pick this mission. Do you know that?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "This mission picked you." Which is a very interesting, if you look at our definition of purpose, purpose in the Western definition is something you or I would set for ourselves, chase it for 18 years, feel very grumpy that we are not able to achieve it for 18 years, then achieve it, do a TED talk for 18 minutes, and then suddenly you're empty for the rest of your life unless you set another one. Okay, which is a very productized, almost capitalist view of setting purpose, right? It hit me really hard when I started to realize I didn't choose this. Ali left our world, and then I suddenly found myself in this. I wrote Solve for Happy, and I had no idea where Solve for Happy was going to go. Our original mission was 10 million happy, right? And I said, that's a mission that's enough for the rest of my life, 10 million happy. And the fact is that 1 billion happy chose me, right? Not because I'm special in any way, but because somehow being the ex-chief business officer of Google X, with an understanding of spirituality, with a maybe an algorithmic and logical approach of explaining soft topics, I don't know, right? But putting it together, I believe I was ready to try and tackle the challenge. Once you see it that way, something very strange happens. You suddenly don't glorify yourself anymore. You suddenly don't believe that you're the one making it anymore. You're not, right? If life chooses you to spread the message that you spread on this podcast, okay, all you need to do is show up, which is my definition of purpose. My definition of purpose is actually quite, I believe is quite the opposite of the Western definition. I am a very serious video gamer, right?
What's your game of choice?
I play Halo. I'm an old man. But, there are quite a few tens of millions of players to belittle when you're a Halo champion, right? And yeah, my gamer persona is actually quite, I'm of every million players of Halo, 2 have a chance to beat me. Mm-hmm. So that's how serious I am, right? And believe it or not, it's because I play very differently. I'm in complete flow. I play in my feminine side, which is very interesting because it's a violent game, right? So when you look at life, if there are lots of scientific explanations in simulation theory that will tell you that this could actually be a simulation, the life that we live in. But forget physics. If you take the characters of life as we live it, a lot of life is a game. A lot of life is challenges that come your way, that you are obstacles that you need to overcome. A lot of life is that, there is no end to the game. There are 2 definitions. There is what's known as a finite game and an infinite game. A finite game is like tennis. It's like we're going to play a few sets and one of us is going to win, the other is going to lose. An infinite game is, I don't know. It's
you
like
accomplish one thing, then there's something else to accomplish.
Or the game has no target in itself. The target of the game is the gameplay, right? So an infinite game is, if you want, is a box of Lego bricks where you can make something and then break it and then make something else and then break it. Or, it's Pac-Man where, you really are not looking at the score, you're just enjoying the gameplay, right? So as an infinite game, gamers surprisingly are unlike what most people think. I do not try to finish a level. I do not try to achieve a target when I'm gaming. When I used to game with Ali, I'm now in Halo terms, it's what is known as legendary, right? At the time when I used to play with Ali, I played that on hard, and Ali was legendary, right? Ali truly was what games were made for. And I would start the game and I would rush to the end of the level when we played co-op, right? And that in my mind is a purpose. The purpose is I want to reach the end of the level because that will enable us to go to the next level. And he would literally put his controller down and go like, "Papa, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Ali, the end of the level is here on the right?" And he goes like, "Who wants to get to the end of the level? We're playing." We're playing is a very interesting view of purpose, right? He would go to the places where there is explosions and smoke. And I go like, "Ali, so I understand that we're playing, but why there? This is the most difficult part of the game." And he says, "Yeah, that's where all the fun is, right? That's where you develop and grow." So listen to this. True gamers, we don't game to win. True gamers, we game to become the best gamer we have the potential to become. That's very different. That's your life's purpose. Your life's purpose is to become the best version of you that you have the potential to become, right? Whether that's in business, basically that means I wake up every morning, I try to work ethically as best as I can, I try to become more efficient, I try to maximize the impact, I try to maximize the returns and so on. Whether that's in relationships, You go into a relationship, you struggle a little, you fight a little, you find a way to communicate, and then you do it better the next time. And you prioritize love over your ego, and you just go on and become the best partner you have the potential to become. In being a father, you F up so many times as a young man who doesn't know, I've never raised kids before, right? And then eventually now I truly see the value of Aya in my life. And even though now she's 30, right, I know exactly how to be a good father to a young woman at 30, right? And each of those, from a gamer's mentality, sets your life's purpose very differently. It's not a moment in the future 18 years away. It's a moment right here, right now, which is I'm going to become the absolute best gamer I can become. I'm not even going to attempt to win this minute. I'm just playing my best game, right? And what's the way to become the best gamer? Is to play, right? So the game of life is all about live fully, engage fully, do the absolute best thing that you can, never do something when you're not present, right? Put your whole heart and mind in it, and do the best that you can, then reflect and say, how well did that work, right? And then do it better the next time, and better the next time, and better the next time, right?
And that process will or should make you happier.
It will make you happier, and it will make you realize not your predetermined life's purpose. It will make you realize your true purpose, which is to contribute as much as your potential can contribute. Very different, okay? It also makes you happier because if you remember my work in Solve for Happy, the happiness equation is very straightforward. Happiness is the difference between the events of your life and your expectations of how life should be, right? So you take the events of your life, the challenges that come your way in the game. If your expectation is that you're going to make every shot correctly and you're going to do everything right and you're going to grow and be richer than, Elon Musk and whatever, you're setting expectations that are always going to be missed. And so you're always going to be unhappy, right? What I tell myself is that my only sole expectation in life is that every situation I will show up in, I will perform the best that I can. Now, interestingly, if I perform the best that I can, I will go the furthest that my potential can get me. Okay? Whether I set a life's purpose that is 10 yards away or 100 yards away, if my potential can get me 110 yards away, by doing the best that I can, I will get there. If my potential can get me only 12 yards away, right? It's the best I can anyway, right? And suddenly when you set your life's purpose that way, life becomes very, very, very straightforward. You're calm and contented every time you've done your best. Okay? It doesn't matter if you succeeded or not, because sometimes success has factors that come from outside you. And by the way, it doesn't matter if you succeeded or not, because it's not the last time. People, younger people, including myself in my 20s and 30s, would think that opportunity comes once in a lifetime. Crap. Opportunity comes in abundance several times a day, right? And when you're ready, the big opportunity shows up. So my wonderful Ali used to teach me, and he was, again, he had that very weird sage approach to him. So he walks into my living room one day, I'm sitting there reading something, and he goes, "Papa, I have to tell you something, but it's going to upset you." I'm like, "Oh, okay. If he wants to speak, he's going to say something. So yes, Habibi, tell me." Okay. And so he sits next to me and he says, "Don't be upset. You're never going to fix the world." I was like, "Why, Ali?" At the time I was in that mentality of the TED Talk. Why, Ali? There are so many people out there that are so driven and they have a spark in them to change the world. Why don't you have a spark to change the world? And he said, you may change the world, but you're never going to fix it. There will always be dictators and politicians that are killing other people. There will always be hunger. There will always be pain. You're not big enough to ever change the world, to ever fix the world. So I said, okay, that actually is wise. If I was setting myself the target of fixing the world, I would be killing myself during this time, because these are very tough times for all of us. So many expectations are missed. right? But he said, you can change it. So I said, how do you change it? And he said, well, I know I'm going to upset you, but you can't change the world either. I said, what do you mean? And he said, you can only change your little world. Now that is so wise. He said, you can only change your little world. Your little world starts with you. You change you, then maybe Aya and I will believe in you and then, do what you're saying, and now we're 3. And then maybe the rest of the family can join. And then maybe you can change your little department at work, and then maybe you can change your company, and then you can change your country. And believe it or not, that's exactly what happened in my life. Exactly what happened. I was miserable at 29. I had no clue what happiness is. Started to work on myself until I figured something out that worked. I shared it with Ali. Ali, gave it to me from the heart point of view. I shared it with some close friends. It worked, right? I applied it at my work, and it probably is the biggest reason why I succeeded, right? And then when I was ready, Ali dies, and life goes like, yeah, write it down. We'll give you a big mission. It's when you're ready that you start to change the world. Every time I changed my little world became bigger. And now I have the opportunity to sit in front of you and talk about whatever it is that I believe in, some right and some wrong, okay? And even if I say wrong things, they're still triggering people's thinking so that they change their little world. If I say right things, it also gives them the tool to change their little world.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the whole game. The whole game is, once you get there, you start to see that there is a difference between ambition and expectation in the happiness equation. Right? So happiness is events minus expectations. Right? If it rains and you want it to rain, okay, the event is rain and your expectation is rain, you're happy. It's, your ex-girlfriend's wedding, you want to make sure that it rains, so, it rains, you're happy. If you want to sit in the sun and it rains, you're unhappy. Expectation differs from the event.
I have a question for you guys. Do you take supplements? And if you do you really know what supplements you should be taking? You see, this is a problem I had for years. I would walk into a supplement store, I would buy loads of random bottles of supplements and just pop pills every day, hoping for the best. But in reality, I had no idea whether or not I should be consuming these supplements. That is where Bionic came into the picture and solved that problem. You see, I've been working with Bionic for the past couple of years, and since 2021, I've been getting my blood work done with them every 3 to 4 months. And based on that blood work, they send it off to get analyzed, and then they put together a very specific customized formula for me, which will last me for 3 to 4 months until I get my next blood work done. And honestly, it's been an absolute game changer for me. They also offer another product called Bionic Go, where all you need to do is go onto the website, fill in questionnaire, and then based on that questionnaire, they can give you your customized supplements. So if that sounds like something that would be of interest, which I highly recommend, go onto the website, bionic.com, and you can use the link in my description to get a nice little discount on your first order. So you're saying it's good to go into anything with no expectations?
No, it's good to go. So first of all, you need to go into anything with ambition. There is a difference between ambition and expectation. Mm-hmm. Ambition is 1 billion happy. Okay? Expectation is very few people in the history of humanity have reached a billion people. So who am I? Right? Now, but the ambition is nicely directional and stretching. That's how you set ambitions. Right? Expectation is, I'm going to do the best that I can today. I might say a few things that will register with a few people. Okay? I might screw up a little bit and say a few other things. I hope they will not be noticed. And eventually, of your audience, who are vast and wide, we may reach a few tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people. Even then, believe it or not, a billion happy is very far away. So if you and I affect 1 million people today, a billion happy is endlessly far, right? So my ambition is 1 billion happy. My objective is to do the best I can with you today.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Now, with that little purpose, mini life purpose, I have to prepare very well. I have to really hone down my message and understand where I stand in life. I have to, listen to a lot of the feedback I get from people, whether in talks or social media or whatever.
You read comments?
I read tons. I made this promise at a point in time to answer every message I receive on social media. I didn't know.
Sounds quite stressful.
I know. So I'm not able to keep up anymore.
I tried to do that when I first started my channel, and I really enjoyed it. But then it's unsustainable as it grows.
I made a promise that every comment below 4 lines, right? And sometimes people send very comprehensive things, and I'm not able to respond to them. But as many as I can, I still probably answer 70% or something.
This is on your channel?
On Instagram.
On Instagram, okay.
Right? But what does that mean? It means that my objective, my life's purpose in the moment where I hold my phone to look at Instagram is to connect deeply to humans. Because believe it or not, that's much better than all of the knowledge you can write in a book, right? If I fail at it, my expectation is I'm just a human. I may be able to answer 40, 50 every day, maybe able to, do it 3-4 times a week, but I wouldn't kill myself if I don't. The ambition is I want to answer every one of them. The expectation is I'll answer as many as I can. It's always your life's purpose is to do the best that you can. You want to become the best gamer, okay? And gamers, by the way, they learn techniques. So I answer a lot of them in voice, okay? I use, transcription even when I answer back in text, right? Very often I take a copy of the answer if it's useful for others and put it on my story, right? Very, very often I actually record the video and answer that way, right? So that others can benefit from it. That doesn't matter. What matters is you're setting ambitions and you're not killing yourself when the ambitions don't happen. Your question was, and should I set low expectations? No, you should set realistic expectations. Low expectations would not make you succeed in life, not make you go very far. But I wish I was as athletic and fit as you are. But I'm 57. Okay, my expectation is that at my age with my lifestyle, I'm actually doing reasonably well. I go to the gym 4 times a week. I eat reasonably healthy, and amazing. If I set an expectation to be in your, physique, impossible, and I would be disappointed all the time.
Yeah, I think that's the problem with social media. Is so many people have these expectations of looking like the fitness guy that they are inspired by, and it's like. That takes, first of all, these people are largely genetically gifted. They do it for a living as well.
They do it for a living. Yeah. And I think that's when we fail. The snapshot. The snapshot is, I could look at you or my dear friend Stephen or, Joe Rogan and compare them to my podcasts and say, oh, come on, we take the same amount of time to record and film, we take the same amount, probably more or less the same cost to produce and so on, but then you go so much further. And I can compare and say, why do I, fall short? I don't. I fall very high. I'm, in the top 5 of my category, right? I fall very high in my category, but I choose my category. And at the same time, by the way, I'm not a podcaster. Podcasting is part of my mission to reach a message of happiness to people.
Same with me.
Yeah, right. And I think that's the game. The game here is, again, probably the reason you're successful is you come here, you show up, and you do the best that you can. Do the best you can preparing. You do the best that you can in the conversation, and that's it. That's as far as you go. If you set yourself a target and say, this episode needs to be viewed 20 million times, it's unrealistic. It's ambition that I want to get to an episode that will be viewed 20 million times. But all you can do right now is to have the best conversation we can have. And this really, when we spoke about Unstressable at the beginning, again, stress, believe it or not, is very algorithmic. Which again was, I know I'm not like a brainiac. I also have a very, very good heart, if you want, and it's connected and it's emotional and I can link to it. But my persona in my writing is the happiness engineer, if you want. I try to take very soft concepts and put them in algorithmic formats. right? So when Alice came and said, let's write about stress, I said, great, you go write a chapter so that we agree, what's our writing style. And I'll try to figure this stress thing out in a way that my brain understands. And of course, my brain, I know it sounds really weird, but I don't understand anything until I see an algorithm and numbers, even happiness, even stress. And so I started to look for it, and believe it or not, the easiest way for you to understand stress is to compare it to physics. Because in physics, we have a definition of stress and strain and fatigue and so on that are actually so applicable to humans. So in an object, if you stress an object, stress is not the force applied to the object. It's the force divided by the square area of the cross section of the object. So if you want to carry 100 kilograms on a pencil, the pencil will break. But if you want to carry it on, a 4x4 inch a piece of wood, it wouldn't even feel the stress, right? And so in humans, that's very applicable. It's not the challenges of your life that are applied to you that trigger your stress. It's the challenges divided by your square area, which is all of your resources, your abilities, your skills, your learnings, right? And this is why things that stressed me when I was 20, I dealt with them reasonably well when I was 30. I dealt with them with flying colors when I was 40, and I laughed about them when I was 50. They didn't even feature as a stressful thing when I was 50, right? Why? Because the square area was growing.
You become more capable.
You become more capable. You learn more. You have more skills. You have more, right? And so when you see it that way, then you realize, no, stress is not what life sends my way. Okay, stress is how I choose to develop those skills, how I choose to deal with those events, right? And again, I mean, with Alice, I agreed that Alice will write the softer, more feminine sides of the book. But, I took every part of stress, burnout, algorithmic. Burnout is the, you burn out, you break under burnout when the number of stressors you have in your life multiplied by the intensity of each, multiplied by the frequency of applying each of them, multiplied by the time of application, right? Sum all of those up. When the sum exceeds your ability to carry the load, you break, right? And so this is why normally we burn out when you get that one final comment on social media or one final message on WhatsApp. That message in itself wouldn't have burnt you out or break you, but on top of all of the other stressors that you have in your life, eventually the load exceeds your ability to deal with it, and then you break down, right? Very algorithmic. And now that you see it that way, I give people clear exercises, literally like going to the gym. As a matter of fact, there is a chapter in the book called The Gym, right? And literally like going to the gym. Sit down, write all of your stressors. We categorize stressors into a model we call the ton of stress, TONN. So trauma, obsessions, noise, and nuisances. Okay, and basically trauma is external macro stress. It comes from outside you, and 91% of us will have a PTSD-inducing traumatic event at least once in our life. Like losing a loved one or a very harsh breakup or whatever, right? Losing your job and so on. Those traumatic events, 91% of us will get them at least once in our life. Many will get them multiple times in our life. 93% of us, of those, will recover within 3 months. These were statistics done after 9/11. So people that were on the site of 9/11, 93% recovered in 3 months, right? 96.7% will recover in 6 months. Only 3.3% will remain with PTSD longer than that. More interestingly, most of us who are subjected to trauma experience post-traumatic growth. So we go out of trauma stronger, better, better able to deal with more trauma or more stress in our life. Right?
Well, I lost my mother when I was 11 to breast cancer. And I feel like after that point in time, there was no loss that could hurt me. It's like I'd built up tolerance to
you build you not without pain, huh?
Yeah.
But with the pain, you build tolerance, you build resilience, right? And you build growth. It's like, when what doesn't break you makes you stronger is absolutely very, very much true. So this is the T. The T is outside our control. The O and N are within our control. So obsessions are also macro, so they're big in size, but they're internally generated. It's like, I will never find love. You take a script, and you play it in your head over and over and over and over, and you obsess about it, that it becomes a trauma. Normally, by the way, it's triggered by a small t, by a conditioning or a trauma in your life or a breakup or whatever. And then you hold on to it. I will never forget when I was teaching Solve for Happy early in my speaker career. I have a concept that I say happiness is a choice. Also, by the way, being unstressable is a choice, right? Because if you do the right things, you'll get there. It's just like fitness. Fitness is a choice. Most people will say, oh, no, my genetics and I'm made this way. No, if you go to the gym 4 to 5 times a week, eat healthy, rest properly, you'll be fitter, right? You may not have a six-pack, but you will be fit, okay? So I used to teach Solve for Happy, and then I would explain happiness is a choice, and then there was a break after that. And then one woman walks to me, old, she was 76 years old, right? Walking slowly, really almost angry at me. And she came to me and she said, how can you say this? I have no idea what happened to me. And then she paused for a second and said, when I was 16, right? And I cried. I said, 60 years. Actually, I remember it was 56 years, so she must have been younger. I said, 56 years of your life. You've completely obsessed about an event that happened when you were 16. And I hugged her and I said, did it work? Did the event go away? Did anything change? Did they show up and apologize? And she burst crying, right? Sometimes we obsess on a concept. My wonderful wife Hannah is a very serious therapist, and she talks about those scripts. Somehow, somewhere in your conditioning, you get a script, and the script says something like, you're ugly, or you're good for nothing, or you'll never find love, or you're the victim, they mistreated you, or life, in the case of my dad, which again was one of the reasons that triggered me to write Unstressable. My dad was an incredibly successful engineer, truly built the majority of the road and bridge and tunnel network of Egypt when he was responsible. And then at the end of his career, the CEO changed, and so they gave him another responsibility and took that department and gave it to someone else. So he sat in his living room in the dark for 3 years with one obsession, which is they never valued me. And I attempted so hard at the time, I was in my early 20s, to say, what are you talking about? You're like one of the most distinguished engineers in the country, right? How can you say they never valued me? And he obsessed about that thought until I held him in my arms when he had a heart attack and left us, right? And obsessions are generated from within you, right? And they have the impact of trauma prolonged, right? Then there are what we call noise, which are the small things. You're walking out of the apartment and you look at yourself and you say, oh, what's that belly? Or my hair is frizzy, or whatever, right? Little ones. And we're very generous with those. You can give yourself 27 of those every hour of the day, right? And then there is noise. Noise are stressors that are sub-trauma. They're not that big, but there are so many of them. From the alarm that jolts you out of bed in the morning, to the Instagram comment that annoys you, to the commute, to, who stays here, Mike? Like this commute must kill you, man, right?
Yeah.
And
I just don't leave the house anymore.
Exactly, right? It's like when you add them all up, you start to suddenly end up in a place where they break you, right? So within those, I tell people explicitly, sit down and write a list of everything that stressed you last week, okay? And then look at every one of them from the burnout equation point of view and say, okay, my commute is stressing me. Can I eliminate it, okay, by moving to another place? Can I make it easier by maybe moving at a different time? Okay. Can I make it less by maybe working from home 3 times a week? Or can I make it more enjoyable by taking a good cup of coffee with me and listening to a great podcast like yours, right? And believe it or not, just by sitting down with that list and eliminating all of those stressors, right? You get that stressor that tells you, my wonderful daughter, her hair is beautiful. She's Mediterranean. We have a bit of African origin, from Egypt, and so her hair is beautifully curly. Right? As a young woman, she, in her teens, she would panic when her hair is curly. And then she went to study in Canada. And of course, that hair in Canada is like exotic, right? And suddenly she realizes that, hey, by the way, that thought I was torturing myself with is actually not true at all. And can you find all of those thoughts? Can you actually list down all of the little things that you tell yourself that stress you? And sit with a good friend and say, is that true, by the way? I used to tell Aya, your hair is beautiful, don't panic. We used to sing it every morning when she's going to school. Your hair is beautiful, your hair is beautiful, your hair is beautiful, don't panic, right? And believe it or not, until now, she remembers that the brain plays on you. Can you look at your obsessions? And tell yourself openly, I'm never going to find love. Is that true? Where did you come up with that? And by the way, if it's true, can you accept it and work with it? Right? It's not true, by the way. And so on. So there is a lot of this stress that we feel in our life that's within our control. I mean, of course, the book is not that simple, because fitness is not that simple. You have to show up, you have to do your, multiple muscles, you have to do them right, and so on and so forth, right? It's not that simple, but at the very top level, it's a choice. It's not the events of your life that stress you, it's the way you deal with them that does.
Yeah. What advice would you give to people who, because you mentioned before, whatever it is that you choose to do, you want to do your best,
100%.
Give your best.
Yeah.
But what advice would you give to those people who actually don't really know what it is that they should be doing? Or they have a number of different things that they could potentially be the best at?
So the truth of the matter is what Malcolm Gladwell taught us in Outliers, right? That many of us have the potential to be good at several things. Right? The one that you dedicate 10,000 hours to is the one that you're going to be very good at. Mm-hmm. Now, the problem is, I dedicated 10,000 hours of my life to running small businesses, for example, or, advising small businesses and startups. I'm good at it. Fucking hate it. Okay? And there was a time in my life when I was in California that I was so good at it, and California is a startup nation, if you want, that I had so many requests that I used to say, okay, I can't deal with all of this. I'm going to show up in Blue Bottle Cafe in University Avenue. I think a lot of people will laugh when they hear this, because I did every Sunday from 11 to 4 p.m., University Avenue, Blue Bottle Cafe. And, we would have a table of like 20 people, and I would answer as many of them as I can. And in my mind, I thought, this must be my life's purpose. No, it's not. Okay. I'll tell you how you can find out what you shouldn't do, right? Because it's actually, most of life is a game of elimination. It's not a game of deduction, if you want. In Unstressable, we say you're made up of 4 elements. You're made of a mind, a heart, a body, and a spirit, right? In my attempt to find out what I shouldn't do, I try to align 3 of them. So if your mind is telling you, that was my mind. My mind was saying, you're a startup genius. You should coach startups. You've started up so many businesses in your life. This is what you're supposed to be doing here. Okay? But your heart is telling you, I freaking hate it. And, your spirit is telling you, spirit here is intuition, right? So your sort of non-physical form, your consciousness, if you want, knows a lot more than what you know when limited by the physical limits, right? So if your consciousness is saying, I don't feel that this is what I should do, I don't feel, that my world ends at Blue Bottle Cafe on Sundays, right? I feel that there is something else that I should be doing. If the 3 of them don't align, okay, I normally suggest that you follow your heart or your intuition. Okay? And if it's harder to follow your intuition because we're trained not to. So at least follow your heart. If something that you're doing and you're doing so well, you're not enjoying, you might as well, over time, you don't have to jump ship, but over time, find something else that you do well enough, and that with 10,000 hours you'll be doing so well, but that you're absolutely in love with. Okay, and when you do that, it becomes quite easy. So and to give you an example of intuition,
is this something that your intuition improves with age, or would you say it's fairly consistent?
Your intuition declines with filters. So I don't know how much you believe in spiritually that there is a part to us that's non-physical.
Yeah.
Right? Religion will call that a soul. Call it a soul if you want to. Spiritual teachings will call it consciousness. Fine, call it consciousness. Call it a goat if you want. It doesn't matter. But when my son was on the intensive care table and he left our world, his same beautiful, handsome physical form was there. But I can guarantee you Ali was not there. Okay, you can easily understand that something animates us, something uses this avatar to navigate the physical world that is non-physical. And in Solve for Happy, in my first book, I attempted to explain that with very deep quantum physics and theory of relativity. And when the science would blow you away. We truly are not physical.
Yeah.
Right? So that non-physical entity that is who you are. Think of a very simple example. For you to be able to see planet Earth, we had to leave planet Earth in a spaceship and take a picture of the blue planet, right? For you to be able to see this building and describe it from the outside, you have to stand outside. It's a subject-object relationship, right? So for you to be able to experience the arrow of time, the passage of time, your conscious self has to reside outside space-time. Otherwise, you wouldn't notice it, right? And so that conscious self that resides outside space-time, like my son's dream, has the ability to be everywhere all the time, right? It has the ability to see, to live everywhere and all of the time, right? Because it's timeless. It's not subject to space-time, right? Because of that, its intuition on purpose is very different than yours. Its understanding of causality is very different than yours. Some of the teachings of reincarnation, for example, are quite interesting when you understand that there is no time. How can I reincarnate through the arrow of time when there is no time? Okay, it seems to me more analogous to the ability of either watching several DVDs at the same time. So if you watched Forrest Gump 1,000 times, and I told you, okay, here is a book, how would Forrest Gump behave, with that book, you'll probably be able to make a reasonable guess, as if you were Forrest Gump himself, right? So that could be one way of looking at your consciousness, your non-physical self, experiencing the lives of many others, right? It could also simply be that all of them are happening not in chronological order, not in time, but in causality. So you can start to question, did I write Solve for Happy because Ali died? Or did Ali die so that I write Solve for Happy? Right? So suddenly you can rework the story of space-time from a very logical sequence of events, but that are causality-based, not time-based. Okay? When you start to see all of that and you start to separate between your physical form and your consciousness, call it, or soul, you'd start to understand that intuition is the ability to crunch a massive amount of data, some of which you're aware and some of which you're not even aware of, okay? And provide that to you in an answer. And like, look, I can't explain to you why there's something wrong with this mathematics, but there is something wrong at that answer. Can you please review it? right? And many of the genius mathematicians I worked with in my lifetime, and me at a younger age, would be able to tell you that. I would literally look at a 50 by 20 spreadsheet and I'd say, this cell doesn't look right. I don't know why.
It's the same thing with people. You just get like a weird
You get that
vibe. And it's
vibe,
like,
right?
You
Yeah.
can't explain it.
You can't explain it, but it's a mix of 500 people that you have come across before that had this body language that actually ended up doing this, or you don't know, you don't really know. You're crunching so much data and presenting it to yourself in the form of intuition. Problem with our modern world is that we don't value that in the workplace at all. Right? We want to be data driven. We want to be, logic driven. We want to be process driven. And so if someone says, hey, I don't think this is right, people will say, can you please just do it? Right? Unless you can prove to us that it's not right, can you please not do it? Go ahead and do it, right? And I think the game is, how do you trust your intuition? How do you listen to your intuition without being illogical or irrational, is by taking it as a signal. As I said, when you get that arbitrage between your heart, your intuition, and your mind, or by the way, if you get an arbitrage between your actions, heart and mind, right? So if you tell yourself, I want to be dating 25 women a year, okay, but your heart somewhere is saying, I miss that intimacy of one dear person in my life, and your actions are one or the other. You're either actually dating 25 women a year or not, right? Then suddenly that arbitrage tells you it's not working. Something is not right. And I would always say, listen to your heart. So, or listen to your intuition as a signal to tell you, use your mind to reflect on this properly, to convince yourself with your mind. Or by the way, if you're really advanced and almost enlightened, just follow your intuition.
And take action. Don't ignore that voice.
And just really tell yourself, I'll tell you openly, one of the biggest advancements of 1 billion Happy, the mission, is that I'm working less and less every year, right? So it through the first few years, it's now 7 years on the mission, right? Through the first years, I took every opportunity to do everything that I can all the time, right? And it worked really well, but I did not have the chance to have that creative freedom to sit down and write interesting things, right? The less I engage, believe it or not, the more the mission takes a life of itself, of its own, really. And the more I have the ability to sit down and creatively work on other problems, right? And somehow that was my intuition, not my mind. My mind was, look, you're resilient. You can do 14 hours. Why are you doing 11? Interestingly, because my body, in that case, the arbitrage was not my heart, but my body was collapsing. And my intuition was saying, but that's not as effective. You could sometimes sit down and write 2 pages that affect 100,000 people instead of sitting in a podcast that affects 10,000, right? And it's all of that. I don't know how to call it. It's all of that reflection time. This is why my podcast is called Slow Mo, right? The opposite of that executive that was running around like crazy. It's that weekly opportunity to slow down and reflect on a topic that I, believe it or not, when I invite the guest, may have not reflected on that topic before, right? And it's almost the opposite of the message that the world keeps telling you: run faster, try harder, resilience and grit. No, grit is not, honestly, grit is useful when life becomes a little more challenging. So imagine if you're on a road and the slope becomes a little higher, so it becomes a little more difficult. But sometimes life, you walk into a roundabout and it closes 3 exits and keeps 1 open, right? So what would grit tell you if you keep hitting your head against exit number 2 trying to get out? Grit is not actually the right answer. Flow is the right answer, right? And I think we get told all of those things because of the capitalist approach to trying harder, working harder, becoming cogs in that machine. When in reality, a bit of reflection, a bit of looking at what type of cog you actually are would take you a lot further.
What do you think, or are you religious?
I'm very religious, yeah, but not belonging to any specific one. I'm a Muslim by birth and by education, if you want, and because I speak Arabic, Islam is so different when you read it in Arabic.
Yeah.
But I've studied every single one of them. I studied Christianity very deeply. I studied Judaism as much as I could find material. I dove very deep in Taoism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Sufism. And I ended up with a religion that I call the fruit salad, if you want. So here's where religion becomes quite tricky. Religion has a beautiful core. Every single one of them has a beautiful core. Don't kill the other guy. Great. Yeah, actually, great advice. Can we all do that? Please, can we stop killing the other guy? Right? But then there is so much input that comes in after the messenger or the sage or the teacher leaves, right? There was a book, I don't remember the name of the author, called The History of God. And she traces the residue of the previous religion in every new religion. So, Judaism comes in the pharaonic Egypt, where the Book of Dead and Ra, the son of the god of the sun, basically the god of the sun or whatever, and the whole idea of the Book of the Dead of the pharaonic religion is the reason why there was pyramids, because there is an afterlife, and there is in the afterlife there is all of this and so on and so forth. You go to Judaism and you see in the I don't know, in Arabic we call it the Israeliyat. Basically, you see a lot of that. The whole idea of torture and heaven and hell, if you want, even though Judaism really doesn't see it that way. But then, Prophet Muhammad comes in Mecca and then moves to Medina, where 78% is Jews, or 70% is Jews, right? And you can see influences of that in the stories that are told. And then you go to Buddhism. Buddha was basically spoke Sanskrit and was teaching in India, if you want. And then you have his words translated into Tibetan 2,000 years later, or I don't know how many years later, 200 years later, something like that, right? And you suddenly realize there is a lot of human input into it. Every religion has a lot of human input. Even in Islam, where we believe that the Quran is preserved, right? A lot of the interpretation, Sharia and fiqh and so on. So all of the teachings, if you want, what should you do? How should you split this, and how you carry that, and so on and so forth, is explained by teachers, right? Humans at the end of the day. Now, in some cases, what the humans teach and how those humans behave gets you to really dislike religion. Okay? But the truth is, if you go back to the beautiful core, the core is amazing. Don't cheat on your wife. Yeah, great. And by the way, are you going to tell my wife to not cheat on me? Seems like a good deal. I like that. Right? Or have compassion for the other guy, love thy neighbor, or have resilience, or whatever. And once you see that, I started to liken it in my mind to the idea of, if I gave you a basket of apples, of which 2 were perfect and 10 were not so good, rotten or whatever, would you throw away the whole basket, or would you keep the 2 good ones, and then the 2 good bananas, and then the 2 good kiwis or whatever, and create a nice little fruit salad, right? And that's what I attempted to do. I attempted, when I was 16, being born a Muslim, and Islam is a conformative religion. So if you live in an Islamic society, you'll be expected to have religion as part of everything that you do. But as I was 16, I was reasonably religious. And then I looked at all of this and I said, can I verify in a way that my mind understands if all of this has basis at all, right? And as I told you many times, my mind, if you allow me, understands mathematics and numbers. So I did something that I used to call at the time the mathematics of the divine, which was a very accurate comparison between the possibility of evolution and natural selection, which is a form of organized randomness, if you want, the Big Bang, evolution, natural selection, versus design. And how likely is it that this very complex creation that we live in is the product of design or randomness, if you want. Randomness that corrects itself, okay? And science will tell you openly, and I know a lot of scientists will prosecute me for that, but I write it in chapter 14 of Solve for Happy. The mathematics is undeniable. Huh? If you take the mathematical possibility, plausibility, if you want, of everything that you've ever experienced, including this incredible form of yours that's capable of reasoning and, that has this very complex biological machinery and, the entire world around us and the universe being the product of randomness, it's plausible. It's possible. Okay? But is it probable? Okay? And the big debate between religious people and, non-religious people, if you want, is that each of them is lying. So the religious people will tell you, no, there is a God, I don't have to prove it. Okay, you have to have faith and believe. And the non-religious people will say, hold on, but, there is no God and I can prove that, when the scientific method actually cannot prove a negative. There's absolutely no way that you can prove that there are no plinkos in this room. Okay, if I tell you that a plinko is an object that looks like a crystal but is black in color, scientifically, you cannot prove that it doesn't exist, because you would have to scan every bit of that room with instruments that you don't have to find something that could be microscopic in size, and you can't prove against it, right? So when you can't prove for or against something, mathematics will go to probability. We'll say, well, how probable is it that it exists, and how probable is it that it doesn't? Now, here's the interesting bit. All of the theories of plausibility of evolution, natural selection assumes that if we had infinite time to try, we'd be able to create everything. I agree 100%. From a math point of view, that's possible. The issue is we didn't have infinite time. We had 13.7 billion years from the beginning of the universe. 9 billion years later, giving us 4.3 billion years, the Earth started to form. 3 million years ago, we started to have, life form on Earth. And tens to hundreds of thousands of years ago, we started to have complex life, right? Now, if you take the T, capital T, and put it in the evolution and natural selection equations, you'd get incredible results. I mean, if you'd allow me, just so that I don't get this wrong. One of my calculations were that if you were to assume that the evolution from Homo erectiles to Homo sapiens, the last link in the evolution to humans, okay, is as complex as writing a sentence randomly on a keyboard with a monkey, let's say, randomly, writing 57 letters randomly on a keyboard to form that sentence. Then you would need. Okay, so. Let me give you a few examples. So you would have, for us to happen, the number of trials from Homo erectiles to Homo sapiens, okay, would be 2.7 million trillion skeletons, basically failed attempts, on every square meter of planet Earth, not on planet Earth. 2.7 million trillion skeletons on every square meter of planet Earth, right? If you take one protein, I don't know if you understand the concept of protein folding. So proteins basically are made of strands. So they almost like a necklace made of amino acids. And then each of the amino acids will have a property. One wants to turn left, the other wants to coil on itself, the third wants to push out, and so on. And because of that, the protein keeps shaking until it folds into the final machine that it's made of. In your body, there are 20,000 proteins. The shortest of them, I think, is 168 amino acids long. Okay, for that protein to happen randomly, to keep trying, okay, and then eventually end up, making that protein, that little machine, whatever it is, a pump, a gear, whatever, you would need 2.7 million trillion times the age of planet Earth, the 4.3 billion years. Right? If it keeps randomly trying to fold. It's almost like an origami. Huh? If I give you a blank sheet of paper and tell you, make me a Bentley out of that sheet of paper, you're going to take a lot of attempts to try to get there. Right? If I gave you an instruction manual and I said, fold it this way, then return and fold it the other way, and then do this and then do that, you're likely going to get there. Right? So lots of those little examples, which will tell you, yes, it is possible that if the sun kept hitting the sand patch outside my home for the next 4 billion years, an iPhone will come out. Right? There is sand there to make the microchips. There is sand to make the glass. There is copper somewhere in that, that can aggregate together and fall on a nice little, circuit board. And then the screen would form, and somehow it gets covered with the glass, which breaks exactly right to fall into the iPhone screen. And, you can actually imagine it's possible with enough attempts that the sand patch outside my garden is going to deliver an iPhone. But is it probable? In your logical human mind, is it probable? Or is it only probable when there is a design of the iPhone, when there is a Steve Jobs, right? And so I ended up at that time with not faith, but almost no certainty. You never have certainty, but a very high probability that we are the topic of design.
Yeah.
Right? And if we are the topic of design, then there is an interesting possibility that this entire video game is just a simulation, and that there is a game designer, and that the game designer might actually be you. Right? And if that's the case, and if my assumptions on time are true, that here, if you live long, you may make it to a 90 or 100 years, but your non-physical form is timeless, which is why heaven and hell are told to be eternal. Okay? By the way, we don't know if there is heaven and hell again, but everything beyond this life is eternal because it's timeless. Now, if you really think about that I have 100 years here and timelessness in my non-physical form, in my consciousness, in my spiritual form, then which of those deserves more of your attention? Should you invest your life in your 100 years at best? By the way, they could be 21 like Ali. Or should you invest them in that non-physical part of you, in your spiritual side? And once you make that decision, a lot of your life changes. Okay? A lot of your connection to that spiritual side changes. A lot of your connection to all of being changes. Okay? A lot of your sorrow when you lose a deal, or when your car gets scratched or whatever, suddenly becomes quite a bit irrelevant. Right? A lot of your understanding of what happens to my son when he leaves the world becomes a lot more concrete. You can't for certain say my son is in A, B, and C, but you can for certain say that my son's physical form has decayed, but that his spiritual form was never physical. Okay? And that my spiritual form will last after my physical form decays as well. You can sort of start to become almost certain that death is not the opposite of life. Death is the opposite of birth. You come to this level of the physical world, physical game, if you want, through a portal called birth, and you leave it through a portal called death, and that life exists before, during, and after. That your non-spiritual, your spiritual, non-physical side always existed. It's always been timeless.
It's so fascinating. I mean, even before I go to bed, to almost de-stress me, I like to watch documentaries and videos on space and the universe, because it makes me think that
Mind-boggling.
anything that I'm concerned about or worried about or that's playing through my mind repeatedly, I just realize that it's not even worth worrying about in the grand scheme of things.
It really isn't. It really isn't. And, it is fascinating that on this speck of dust that we call planet Earth, compared to the vastness of the universe, there is a wonderful being that I can connect to and, become friends with. And we have this incredible conversation, and we can dive deep and philosophize and, disagree, but, agree. And it's just wonderful. But at the end of the day, it's nothing. Like this entire species, if all of planet Earth disappears tomorrow, the universe wouldn't notice. Would not notice. Can you believe that? We're that tiny speck of dust around a star that's not even a significant star, of which there are billions in our galaxy, of which there are billions of galaxies. And yet somehow we think that this is the game.
We're so concerned about what's going on, like we argue and worry and talk about the most ridiculous things sometimes. And it surprises me that as a species, we're not more concerned about actually just trying to get off the planet and have a backup plan in case something which inevitably is going to happen to the planet. Could be a comet, could be...
We actually are off the planet. Your physical form is on the planet. Your spiritual form is limitless. You see, the reason why I was able to deal with Ali's death as I did is because when we used to play video games, there would be patches of the game that are so difficult that if we both walk in, we will both die, right? And typically the strategy when you're playing co-op is that one of us would jump in, kill as many enemies as possible, right? And then eventually, would be shot by the enemies. And then the second would walk in, and now there are only four enemies left. You've seen the landscape in the screen of your fellow player, right? And then you walk in and you kill the 4 enemies, and we can move on. And, your partner in the game will respawn as you finish the level, right? And we did that so often, that we would get a rough patch. And so, of course, Ali was the legendary one. So he would jump in first. If we had 18 enemies to deal with, he would get rid of 14 of them, right? And then I would walk in, and interestingly, Ali is sitting right next to me on our living room sofa, saying, "Papa, go left. No, one of them is coming on the right. No, shoot this." And then he would take my controller, literally, physically, and just does it himself, right? And I believe that's exactly what happened in 2014 in July when Ali left. That this video game that we're playing, that's called life, was starting to shape into the level of stress that we have in our world today, which is unbearable, I'll tell you openly, and it's going to become even more difficult with geopolitical and economic and climate challenges and technology challenges. The world in the next 10 years is going to be the most difficult we've ever experienced, right?
Is this because of AI or other?
Partially because of technology, not just AI. So AI and synthetic biology are massive disruptors. Climate change we haven't done anything about, and I think we're about to start paying the price. And geopolitical, let's say economic first, because of all of the, how do I explain it simply? Our Western society, our Western governments have printed too much money. And basically gotten into too much debt, and the only way to repay that debt is to inflate the currencies, so that the government prints more money to pay the debt.
It's just a mess.
and it's a mess. Huh? And so as the government prints more money, your money has less value. So if you had been able to buy an item for 100 dirhams last week, with the same 100 dirhams next year, you're not going to be able to buy that item. It's going to be more expensive, right? But even then, that economic decline, the inflation basically in the face of an economic challenge is, we've never seen the Fed increase interest rates in the face of an economic downturn ever in history, other than the Great Depression, right? But so economically things are going to become difficult, and sadly, and I don't want to fear monger or anything, but sadly, what most people don't understand is that conflict is not the reason for war. Conflict is the alibi that gets created to start a necessary war. And wars are economic movements, right? So sadly, all of the conflict that we see in the world today, perhaps Russia, Ukraine was more political, but what you see in Gaza, for example, in my personal view, all of the tensions that you might get in Taiwan and so on and so forth, the alibis are being created to create a geopolitical conflict that can lead to war, because war is the only fiscal machinery that can take you out of an economic crisis of the magnitude we're in, right? So World War II, you can have stories of World War II and why World War II happened, but World War II is what kickstarted economies at the end, post 1945 onwards. This is when the economy started to come back post the Great Depression. Now, we're in a world today where I think truth has ended. So there is, sadly, if you've seen the movie Idiocracy, sadly, even the smartest of us are no longer able to form an informed view of the world because of all of the distraction, all of the lying, all of the fakeness, all of the AI-driven fakeness,
You don't know what's real anymore.
We don't know what's real, and so you're being told a story around the conflict that is just like weapons of mass destruction, right? You're being told that there are weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, which allows the U.S. to get into Iraq and really destroy a country completely, right? With no obligation to go back and say, oh, several million people died, no weapons of mass destruction, sorry, right? We didn't even, you have to look back and understand from history that the conflict, the weapons of mass destruction, was the alibi that was used. It wasn't the reason for the war. The war was decided before the alibi was created. Okay, and you get that very frequently in today's world with the level of distraction that we're seeing, with the level of divide that you see online, with people who have very little information calling the other guy an idiot because the other guy has also very little information and has a different view.
Yeah.
Right. And I think what is about to happen in this world is that we more and more are going to need the skills of being unstressable, the skills of being connected to all of being. Okay, because I'll tell you openly, if you look at the most inspiring stories of the Great Depression, even though, believe it or not, if you look at the 1920s and the 1910s, which it is shocking how similar the turn of the last century was similar to this turn of the century. So yes, the types of technologies we created were different at the ends of the 2000s, right? But if you look at the end of the 1800s with with electricity and the automobile and the locomotives of trains and so on, there was so much technology being created, like the internet and mobile phones and so on, that happened in the late 2000s, right? Getting into an overheated economy like what we've seen in our early 2000s, followed by the Spanish flu in 1920, which is very similar to COVID in 2020, right? Now going out of the Spanish flu into an economic decline in the face of which the Fed raises interest rates, then you get the Great Depression in 1929. It's not very difficult to project where we're heading, right? But the most inspiring part of this is how people behaved during the Great Depression, right? During the Great Depression, if you look for stories on YouTube or whatever, people went back to their humanness. So all of that greed around, that industrial revolution and the growth and the investment and the stock market and all that, suddenly people started to live back together in homes instead of multiple homes. They, started to help each other. So if you're a mechanic, you fix the car of someone who would help you with, fixing something at your home. And suddenly we went back to being human. Okay. And I really and truly believe that the answer to the times that that are upon us is to go back to being human, right? I mean, in Scary Smart, in my AI book, I openly say, and it's so interesting, the very last sentence of the book, which is normally what I write first. So I write the last sentence first, and then I start the book to get you there, right? And the very last sentence of Scary Smart is, isn't it ironic that the very essence of what makes us human, happiness, compassion, and love, is what we need to survive in the age of the rise of technology, or the rise of the machines, as I call it, right? And it's quite interesting that I searched everywhere for anything that humanity's ever agreed, right? If you have a young lady raised here in the Middle East, she might choose to dress a little more conservatively. If she's raised on the Copacabana beach in Brazil, she will wear a G-string. Neither is smarter than the other, or right or wrong. It's just that we don't make decisions based on our intelligence. We make decisions based on our value set as informed by our intelligence, right? And so those value sets are varied across the world. Right? You go to America, and patriotism is a very high value. It's like, let's, fight the other guy and defend our tribe. If you go to Tibet, they'll say, compassion, I won't even kill a fly. Right? Is one right and the other wrong? Patriotism to a certain extent is wonderful. Nonviolence to a certain extent is wonderful. But where is the balance? Where have we ever agreed any of this? The only three things we've ever agreed are, we all want to be happy. We all have the compassion to make those we care about happy. Doesn't matter if you're a drug lord and you care about your daughter only and don't care about anyone else, you'll want your daughter to be happy. Okay? And we all want to love and be loved. That's it. These are the only three values that humanity's ever agreed. And in an age where everything is becoming so confusing, in my personal view, the only answer is to go back to those three. Okay, to focus on your happiness, not your image, not your success, not your attempt to appear as something that you're not on social media, or attempt to accumulate as much wealth as the next guy, or to be better than your neighbor. To just be happy. And happiness is that calm and peaceful contentment you get when you're okay with life as it is. Okay, it's not to make life give you what you want. It's to enjoy what life has given you. And keep trying to get, other things, but to enjoy what life has given you, happiness, calm and peaceful contentment, to have the compassion to make others happy rather than to bash them all the time, right? So the idea of the way we behave in our world today is, if the other guy says something that I disagree with, I'll bash the other guy. When in reality, you don't want to be bashed yourself, right? And we all want to love and be loved. That's really, truly, and honestly, at the bottom of it. We all want to be able to feel loved by someone and to give our love to someone. Not very complex. If this becomes our approach to life, we will have a much better life as individuals. And because artificial intelligence is going to magnify who we are. Remember, the tech of AI is different from the data, the training data of AI. The training data of AI is the average of humanity. That's the average of humanity, and the average of all of our knowledge, and the average of all of our interactions. And the average of humanity today, sadly, is very vicious and very rude and very aggressive and very disconnected and very divisive. And that has to change. And the only answer in my mind to face the coming times is to invest in yourself so that you learn to become unstressable. You learn to become fit in times of difficult interactions, right? But at the same time, to show up in the world in a way that will be magnified as happiness, compassion, and love.
Is there an individual that you think is having the biggest positive impact in the world today that you can think of? I mean, obviously you're doing a pretty good job, but
I am not. I'm doing the best that I can.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not that far-reaching. Let's put it this way. I don't know. I think there are so many. I mean, you're doing a great job. Every podcaster with a mission is doing a great job. I think.
I think what I've realized in the past, it's actually pretty recent. I feel like I've gone through the years and the phases of living a sort of hedonistic lifestyle where I'm just
Yes.
living for the joy of living, and then I'm realizing it's actually not providing me with that a huge amount of fulfillment, and it actually can lead to sadness. I think what I want to do now and be is just be of use, be useful.
Which is funny when you talk to anyone who hasn't had that hedonistic lifestyle, they'll go like, yeah, but you say that because you've experienced it, right? And I go like, believe me, it just consumes you. It really consumes you. Okay.
Do you feel like people they just have to experience it to understand?
So there is, oops. So there is a,
It's like the people who you could tell people having supercars, endless supercars, is not the answer. But somebody who likes cars is going to ignore that and be like, I don't care. I still want to go and experience what it's like to have all of these cars.
and that's absolutely okay, by the way, right? So I'll try to explain it from multiple angles. One angle is there are firm studies that will tell you that money or success will make you happier until you reach the average income of the people that you deal with or the country that you live in, right? So basically, when your basic needs are met, more money is not going to make you happier. The problem is, for some of us, we compare to people that are actually not the average income at all. So when you're looking at what you believe are your basic needs, they're much bigger than your basic needs.
So this could be problematic if you have a friendship group of very wealthy
100%.
people.
Nothing affects you negatively or positively more than your friendship group. Okay, so you know, in we were talking about religion. So one of the most valuable things I've ever applied to raising my kids was a saying by Prophet Muhammad that basically was that you will become whatever your friend group is. So be very choosy about who you befriend, right? And so when my kids were teenagers, one of the only three things that I insisted that that they adhere to was that I wanted to hold a barbecue once a month for them to invite their top 10 friends. That was it. If they had the best friends, everything will be fine, right? And I think the challenge is this group of friends is no longer just the people that you mix with, okay? It's also the people you follow on social media. They sort of somehow, they show up in your life frequently enough for you to think that they are part of your group, right? And the question is very straightforward. Huh? If you don't believe me, I by the way, I still love cars, and I invested in a garage, in a workshop here in Dubai, just to make them and restore them, and I love them, huh? But I sell them. And I think the idea is there are two reasons you can love that lifestyle. One is you find joy in the mechanics of it or whatever, and the other is you're serving your ego. One of it is that you enjoy this view, or the other is because this view is important when your friends show up. And it's quite interesting. They did a study. I think it was UC Berkeley, or I don't remember. Just don't quote me on the source. But they did a study where they took several thousand people from multiple income groups, asked them how happy they were on a scale of 1 to 10. Okay, and then asked them how much more money do you need to reach 10. And every single one of them, or the majority of them, said double what I make right now. Okay, so the one that was making $100,000 said I want 200. The one that was making $1 million said I want 2 million. The one that was making $1 billion said I want 2 billion. Which basically tells you it's completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you're making $1 billion, or if you're making, I think in today's world, I don't know the number, but there has always been that study that says beyond which it won't make any difference. And for a very long time, it was $6 million, I think. If you made $6 million, if you have $6 million, in the early 2000s or in the 90s, you wouldn't be able to feel the difference if you made more, because you'd still buy more houses and more cars, but at the end of the day, you're always driving one car, or you're always staying in one room, and so on and so forth. Here's the interesting trick. The interesting trick is you don't have to believe any of those studies. You just need to look back at your own life, right? When you were 18 and you had your first job and you said, look, if I make £100 today, that will be amazing. If I make, £400 a month, I'll be a millionaire. That's all I need. You make £400 a month, and then suddenly you say, I don't like this neighborhood. I want to move to another neighborhood. And, my girlfriend is now so, stylish, and I want to go to those places. I need to make $1,000 a month, right? And you strive and you make $1,000 a month, and then suddenly you say, no, hold on. It's not, maybe I should buy something and pay a mortgage. I need to make $4,000 a month. And then you make that, and then, whatever. It's endless. It's endless. There is always something new that you will tell yourself that you need. And the question is, can you learn from that? Can you learn from that, right? So I do the opposite practice. So, of course, because of our lifestyle and because of, everything available online, and, you click twice and you get something delivered to your home, you'll be amazed at how much crap you have.
Oh, yeah.
And the crap gives you very little joy, right? And my wonderful wife, when she came to my home the first time, because I actually am quite a minimalist, at least I want to be a minimalist, right? And I speak about minimalism, and I host The Minimalist on my podcast and so on. And the first time she came to my place, she said, "Oh, you're a minimalist wannabe. You're not a minimalist." I was like, "What do you mean, baby?" And she said, there is all of this pile of crap over there that is not a minimalist approach at all. And I was like, yeah, but it's in the storage room, right? Every place in Dubai, you have a very small maid's room. I turned that into my workshop room, and I have tons of tools and tons of electrical connections and tons of this and tons of that. I'm a minimalist wannabe, right? And when she highlighted that, I started to go back to my typical practice. So my practice has always been, when I was really a minimalist, was to get rid of 10 things every Saturday. Give them to someone. Some of them are small, some of them are big, but 10 things have to leave my home every Saturday. And the joy of those things leaving my home far exceeds the joy of them coming in. Did you realize that?
Yeah.
The joy of having someone receive them and go like, sir, I really needed this. Right, is so much bigger than keeping it in storage and never touching it, right? So, I have so many tools that I rarely ever use, and engineers, we love our tools. So when any worker comes to my home to fix something, I go like, hey, by the way, I have those 10 things that I've not used for the last 2 years. If I need them again, I'll go buy another one, but do you want them? And they feel the happiest they've ever been, and I get clutter out of my life, right? Anything, little things, a jacket here, a t-shirt there, whatever. And it's interesting as you go through that cycle.
I literally did it today. We have like an electronics drawer.
Yeah.
And I had about 10 identical wires of the same thing.
Exactly. Wires are the best example of this. And you
think you need it.
You always look at them and you say, yeah, I'll need this one day. So I think when I asked the minimalists on my podcast, I said, so why do we do this? And they said the first biggest reason why we clutter our life is just in case. I keep that, I love to do sometimes PVC projects, and I keep this PVC glue, right? And, normally I keep it and then it dries. And so when I open it, it's actually not useful. And the entire PVC glue thing is like 6 dirhams. Like this is less than $2. And why do you keep it? Just in case, right? And then you keep it, and when you need it, you don't find it, or when you find it, it's not useful anymore. And you should have just bought the exact amount you needed for the project that you were doing, and then got rid of the rest of it, right? And recycle it properly so that you're not harming the planet, and that's it. And I think that the trick is, again, going back to, it's not the events of your life that stress you. It's not, it's not the availability of choice that's stressing you. It's the fact that you engage in that game altogether. And by the way, it's not just items, it's news feeds. Whether you watch the 6 p.m. news, or you, like our parents used to do, or you actually have 1 billion subscriptions or 1 billion people that you're following that are feeding your mind with crap. Okay, clutter. How much of it is giving you joy? How much of it is enriching you? How much of it is making you better? And how much of it is eating away at you? And can you sit down and go? So one of the most interesting things that happened to me a few weeks ago is that for some reason my phone stopped working, right? So I had to move my WhatsApp to another phone. And I had kept a backup of WhatsApp since I used WhatsApp. That's, I think, 4.5 gigabytes or something like that. Massive. Every conversation I've ever had. And for some reason, my new phone refused to restore the backup. And at the beginning, you were like, I can't live without that. And then suddenly I said,
it's like a fresh start.
Maybe I can, right? And it's quite interesting, because all I did is I said, okay, let me try for a day or two. And if not, the worst case scenario is I'll lose the backup. I'm not going to back up my phone in those 2 days, right? And so worst case scenario is I'll restore that other backup later. Delete the 2 days, fine. Okay? Didn't miss a thing. Like, honestly, it's actually so clean. When someone sends me a new message now, that I get as if it's the first message from that person. I have no idea whatever the fuck we spoke about before. Okay? And I don't miss it. I don't care. Clutter.
Yeah.
So much clutter. And so much stress that results. And it's a choice. Sit back, slow down, write a list of all of the crap that you have in your life and remove it. That annoying friend. That relationship that's not working, and it's not been working for the last 2 years. That car. I mean, I'm not ashamed to say it. There was a time in my life where I had 16 cars in my garage. You can only drive one of them, and the other 15 will break. Right? And renew 15 licenses, and and go to the, like, there was always
switch them on, make sure the battery doesn't die.
Exactly, and you have to drive each of them 30 kilometers. And I know it sounds like problems of privilege, but the truth is they don't give you joy. They don't. Okay, and the truth is, what gives you joy is a deep, intense relationship with something. So Hannah, my wonderful wife, has the opposite approach. So I'm the one that claims to be a minimalist, and she shows up in my life and she says, no, I only buy something when I'm truly and madly in love with it, and I go visit it in the store a couple of times before I buy it. Right? And you go into her home, and her home is so beautiful. By the way, we have 2 homes because we're a long distance relationship. Long distance marriage, very interesting. So, I'm partially in London some of the time. She's partially in Dubai some of the time. But her home is so different. Only things that she not only uses, but absolutely loves. So every interaction with anything is joyful. I have so much crap. Right? And I'm working on it. And every, Ramadan, when I was here in Dubai like half of the month, you wake up in the morning and it's hard to be very effective at writing. So I would just declutter. Beautiful life.
The long distance thing is quite interesting. I feel like that just works for some people in their relationships. Like, I genuinely wonder if I am the type of person that can live with a partner full time. Because I've got to the point now where I'm so content and happy living by myself. I don't know how the situation can be improved if I live with somebody. I'm sure I can do it, but I believe it would irritate me.
Long distance sucks
Mm-hmm.
if it's the right partner. Okay. Locally and someone living in with you sucks if it's the wrong partner.
Mm-hmm.
It's as simple as that, right? So Hannah and I are actually very seriously considering. We're long distance, but we're a lot of the time together because I travel a lot to the UK and she travels a lot here, right? But even then, it's still. I mean, she's amazing, and she's the one I've been looking for 11, 12 years now. I believe I'm that for her, and so truly, long distance sucks. Right. But we started with long distance and, there are lots of entanglements in our lives in the local cities that we're in that have to be untangled. Right. The trick with relationships is that whichever way you run them, they're going to be hard work.
Yeah. Especially once the honeymoon period is passed.
There is no honeymoon period. If it's the right person, there is no honeymoon period. If it's the wrong.
At all, or it's just constant.
Yeah. So understand this. Our next book after Unstressable. So Unstressable is out, in May, but then hopefully by May next year we should have Finders Keepers, and Finders Keepers is about love and romance. And one of the most important concepts to begin with is that we think we go out in the world looking for love, right? When we go dating, especially the romantics of us, we'll say we're out there looking for love. We're looking for our soulmate, our twin flame. Crap. You're lying to yourself. When you're out dating, you're looking for 7 things and love. The 7 things, I call them the perfects. PPRFCTS. Okay? So you're looking for partnership, you're looking for passion, you're looking for romance, you're looking for friendship, companionship, tenderness, and support. This is why you need someone in your life. Okay? And I know it sounds very pragmatic, but don't lie to yourself. Most of us, when we go dating, some of us will go because we want to sleep with someone. Some of us will go because we're lonely. We need to find someone in our life. Some of us need support. Some of us need touch and physical touch and tenderness and compassion and connection and so on and so on. And most of us need all of them in different portions, right? Now, the challenge is if you start a relationship because one of those is high and the others are missing, you're very quickly going to end up saying, this doesn't work, right? So sadly, the honeymoon period that we refer to is very high in passion and romance, right? Passion is fed by uncertainty, by tension. Harmony brings us together and makes us loving, okay? So a long-term relationship tends to tone down on tension, okay? Even if there is something that's not working well, you try to not really stir the waters too much because you want harmony, especially if you start a family and so on and so forth. Passion is the opposite. To have a passionate sexual relationship, you need a bit of tension. You need to miss her and she needs to miss you. You need to want her, but not always get her. You need to, it has to have that spice.
Mystery, unknown.
The mystery, the unknown, the spice. Similarly is romance, which is very misunderstood. Romance is the reward of getting what's unpredictable. So you cannot be romantic. If you give your lover a rose every day, it doesn't become romantic anymore. Okay, the rose, and if you give her a rose on Valentine's Day, it doesn't become romantic. The romance is he loves me not. Is he gonna show up for me today? Oh my God, I didn't expect that. Oh my God, that's so amazing, right? So it's that uncertainty mixed with dopamine and rewards. Right? Put those two together. All of the oxytocins you get from passion, all of the dopamine you get from romance, and it's a lethal cocktail. Like it is the ultimate joy you can ever feel. This is why at the beginning of the honeymoon, right? You're sort of like, this is unbelievable. This is the one, right? The problem is the tendency of a relationship is to go more in the directions of, but I need friendship, I need companionship, I need tenderness, I need support, I need all of the other components, I need partnership. For many, many people, especially in your age group, if you're dating a woman will more often than not want to consider the option of a family, right? So relationships become centered around, I know this sounds horrible, I'm a businessman, around ROI.
Economics.
Yeah, it's return on investment. Okay? And relationships somehow will have to compensate for what is lost when more harmony is offered. So let me try to explain the latter and then the first. So by definition, in a relationship, you tend to have more, especially someone that moves in, you tend to have more predictability. Okay? You want life to be, what you like it to be. You want your coffee machine in the exact same place. You want to be left alone at 7 a.m. and so on and so forth. And if you establish that so that harmony is achieved, passion and romance go away. Right? But passion and romance can be regenerated deliberately. Right? I can, I'm going to go pick Hannah up on the, after this podcast from the airport, right? I have prepared a couple of lovely surprises because I care. I'm definitely going to buy a rose because it makes her happy, right? And we can regenerate the moments of tension, the spice and the missing, and right, by actually prioritizing those over the day-to-day life of her practice, which is extremely full and extremely demanding, and my work. And how do you do that? You do that by creating opportunities for it. You can deliberately create those things. If you let them go, the honeymoon period ends. Even though the same person you were super passionate about is the same person you have right now, it's that you're not creating the moments that made you passionate about them. Right? And this is very, very, very doable. Having said that, believe it or not, the foundation of passion, for example, or romance for a man and a woman are very different. Right? And believe it or not, the core of both of all seven, by the way, and I forgot to say, love resides under all of these. But love is not a prerequisite for any of these, and none of these lead to love. Love is a separate platform, if you want, okay? But the interesting trick about the perfects, those seven things, is that the foundation to getting any of them done is fierce communication, okay? And that's where we all fail.
Yeah, I'll put my hand up and say that many relationships have failed because of the lack of communication.
Yeah. Now, here's the trick. Many of my relationships failed because of lack of communication, or you know what? Can I be honest? Because of lack of interest. If the ROI is high, you're going to put in the effort. When is the ROI high? When what you're looking for is what that person is. So again, I know it sounds really weird because we're talking about love and romance, but I was married for 27 years, or I married the woman I dated for 6 years for 21 years, right? We had a wonderful family. She's an amazing woman in every possible way. Still today, I always, we're always in touch. We're always okay. We're good friends. We're parenting Aya together. Everything's wonderful because that woman made me the person that I am, and she's an incredible woman in every way. But at a point after 27 years, some of the perfects don't work, right? And then I searched for 11 years to try and find a person that actually, you can't say I'm looking for someone that makes me happy. Happy is your responsibility, okay? But someone that matches, someone that fits, because the person that fits me is very different than the person that fits you. Which is, as Hannah taught me. So Hannah and I met on a podcast. She was a guest on my podcast.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we spoke about what? About love and romance, interestingly. And she started by saying, we date our potential, right? And the entire conversation was around the idea of how when you're dating someone, the entire possibility of success or failure is, have you worked on yourself or not? Okay, and it's quite interesting, that if you've worked on yourself and you're in a good place, and you date someone who hasn't worked on themselves, they come into your life and disrupt it, and so you say, I don't want this. If you work on yourself and date someone who's worked on themselves, which is the case of me and Hannah, when we disagree, the conversation is very different. Okay, and so for years, those 11 years, what was I doing? I was actually working on me. I was basically being blessed by amazing women and sometimes junk, right? And in either way, in either experience, I would sit down and I would ask myself, why did that not work for me? Okay, what was I looking for that wasn't available in that person? What was available in that person that I wasn't looking for or unable to deal with, right? And I worked very, very clearly on what it is that I'm looking for, but what it is that was within me that I wouldn't date. Okay, what was wrong with me? So that if I tell myself I'm looking for a woman that's passionate, I might as well work on me so that I can ignite her passion and be passionate, right? If I tell myself I'm looking for a woman that is spiritual, these were my criteria.
You need to be more spiritual.
I need to work on my spirituality, right? And so on. And, I had a criteria of what I called 7 necessities and 4 very nice to haves. The probability, now here is the weird bit, the probability of finding those in one woman, believe it or not, was 1 in 8,437,000 women.
And the odds are even worse if you're looking for someone who's a little bit older.
The odds with every one of those, so we're trying to teach that in Finders Keepers, okay? If you're looking for a man or a woman, okay, that is 1 in 2, right? If you're looking for say a woman in her 30s, that's now, let's say, 1 in every 6 women. Let's say, example. So your probability now to find a woman in her 30s is not 1 in 2 plus 1 in 6. It's 1 in 2 multiplied by 1 in 6. So it's now 1 in 12. Okay? And if you're looking for her to be, let's say, spiritual, and that's 1 in 2, then it's now 1 in 24.
Someone who's working on herself or has worked on herself.
Exactly. Now you keep adding the odds. And so this is why
it's available at that specific point in time.
There you go. Now, if you keep adding the odds, and one of the big chapters, if you want, or concepts of Finders Keepers is, and if you're telling yourself, she has to have that specific color skin or that specific eye color, you're wasting a very important probability propagator on something that doesn't matter. Right? So unless that really matters to you, there are things that matter most. And so normally what we try to tell people is figure out your top 7 criteria, because that top 7 in itself is quite challenging, right? Now, I don't know how to say that in any other way. Hannah has every one of the 7, right? So you know what? When we disagree, I have the interest to work on it. You started your question by saying, I don't want to disrupt my life. It's not worth it. Yes.
At this point in time, I would say.
Yeah. Of course, it's not worth it unless that someone that comes into your life enriches it.
Yeah.
To the point where you tell yourself, oh, hold on. I love my privacy, but I love this, and that so much more. I might as well communicate to her about my privacy. Okay. Which, by the way, again, Hannah and I do very well. So we have a lot of time where it's absolutely okay to be in separate spaces. Okay, we have a lot of time where it's absolutely okay. Like she, as I said, she has a very busy practice. She's so dedicated to her clients as a therapist, and she will literally tell me, "I don't want you at home when I have therapy sessions," and I will respect that. Okay, I will find my own engagements and put them in that day, so that I'm not at home when she has her online therapy sessions, right? When we plan to travel together, right? And she has her face-to-face clients. We will try to travel on the days when she doesn't have face-to-face clients, because that matters, right? Because she's enriching my life. I'm willing to put in the effort to make it work when it's difficult to make it work. Most relationships break because of ROI. Because, as I try to summarize it in Finders Keepers, I say, if you want to keep someone in your life forever, make the square foot next to you their favorite place on the planet. Okay? Simple as that. As long as the square foot next to you is their favorite place on the planet, they'll keep coming and they'll work on it. Their job, by the way, is to make your favorite place on earth the square foot next to them. Okay? And once they manage to do that, suddenly, when disagreements or misalignments happen, you'll both say, but I want the rest of it. Can we work through this one? And it becomes very different as an approach.
Well, I honestly can't wait for that book to come out, and we can talk on and on. But I know it's literally just hit midnight. I know you.
Is it midnight already?
Yes. So I think you have to go to the airport. I can't promise there's going to be no traffic outside.
Yes. Oh man. All right. But I really loved it. Thank you so much. This was a wonderful conversation.
That was amazing. There's so many questions I didn't even get to ask, but
let's see how people like it. If people like it, we can do another and another. I mean, we're neighbors.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you very much.
So such a pleasure. Thank you for having me.